Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Evangelist Nick Garrett channel. Please share, like, dislike, whatever you want to do to engage, just to help us survive on YouTube, not because you agree with everything we say. Today we're doing a 2021 year-end review. I've been doing this since 2016, and for each year my shooting schedule has been between mid-April and December. Well, I've talked with my wife, and we'd like this year to try to extend it to continue year-round because it's become so edifying to us personally, and so many of us have come to rely on it. But that's for the future. As far as the past, our year-end review. Many said in April, how come you haven't gotten on your videos yet? How come you haven't? It was May before I really jumped in there. Well, I knew some stuff needed to improve. So first, I built a website, EvangelistNickGarrett.com. I put things that we had discovered on there. I put theological position papers relative to stuff we were putting out videos on, somewhere where people can go and read my work and read my positions as they come up. And we've been very happy with that website. We also began using a PayPal, Teespring, overall better production, better formatting, better research, some advances in technology. We joined Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all these things, and we're trying to maintain a presence on them. Now the things that are most important, the content itself, the year in review. I wanted to up my game on the research. So, first one I did, I think, was an attempt to suggest that maybe the return of Jesus Christ was imminent. As it would turn out, it would be the second video in my whole history that I ended up redoing because later I did a better job. But we went on to studying the first 113 years of church history, and we discovered the 12 apostles and the first 7 deacons and the first 70 Christians and the first cities established in the Christian world and the lineage of the first 2 or 3 bishops. I mean, we put together such a strong foundation of what was going on in the early church that it's almost impossible to suggest this is made up or some type of mythology. We then jumped into the book of Jasher, which is considered Midrashic Haggadah, Jewish narrative history, but we posited our own new theory that Jasher was authentic Christian text, but it was used by an early sect of Christians called Judaizers that weren't done away with after the Acts Jerusalem Council, but continued to thrive for 500 or 600 years. We did a project this year on the joint declaration of the doctrine of justification. Apparently, back in the early 90s, the Catholic Church and the Protestants, the Lutherans specifically, the parties that had sparked the revolution back in the early 1500s, got together to sit down and hash out, hey, what beef do we really have? And they would conclude that they have no beef on the doctrine of justification. I expected to come out of that project looking at one side or the other and saying one side's right and one side's wrong. The Catholic Church has continued to do this great research with other sects and denominations of, hey, can we sit down and study where we're different and where we're the same? Well, they would determine in their joint declaration that they have no beef with the Lutherans, that they think Martin Luther's interpretation of justification was actually right, but that there was no beef with the Catechism either, because the Catechism simply provides a list of objectively factual statements about these occurrences without going so far as to define them as Luther did. So it's, which do you want, truth or truth? That is essentially the conclusion they came to. You can watch that whole series. We lost Rob Skiba this year. Somebody who, for people who know the Nephilim narrative, he was one of the early names in that, and we'll mourn his loss for sure. I think he got really into the flat earth thing later in his career. I know him most for his wonderful work serving the Lord. He was always a great Christian, inquisitive, why, always studying and wanting to do the best for the Lord. I actually gave a couple sermons this year, which are a little out of my wheelhouse. We had one on the Tower of Babel, and more successfully, these little sermon vignettes on anxiety. I did one on why Jesus chose fishermen, and in it I shared this kind of week-long catharsis. I was having a lesson with God about So I did a 3-part series on the book of Romans, which did not turn out as I had hoped. I had been reading Plato's Republic at the time, and in it, it's laid out like a conversation. A speaks, then B speaks. And one of the justifications in evangelical Christianity for preaching the gospel, for penal substitutionary atonement, Jesus paying for our sins, has always been the judge at the bench. So I thought, well, why don't we stage a courtroom scenario to tell Romans and see it all unfold? It'll take the pressure off accusing an individual of all these sins and put it on all of us instead. We're all being accused of the sin. We're all on trial. Let's see how this feels. I just didn't execute it as much as I would have liked to have, but you live, you learn, right? Some videos on the whitewashing of history, which is a pet interest of mine. I know there's a lot of extreme views on that side, but there's also some truth at the kernel, and that's interesting to me. The conspiracies of Constantine, there are dozens, and it's easy clicks, and it's I've studied the guy so much, it's easy to just debunk this stuff now. Top 10 Christians we couldn't live without. That video ended up being 40 minutes long, and it's a top 10. And I had to give honorable mentions and talk about a bunch of other people just because it was so hard for me to do it, but it was funny. So overall, coming up, one more thing I wanted to touch on that we started doing this year. We're finally starting to learn to live as a community together online. I didn't think church could be an online thing. I really didn't. And I still believe it's better in person. But we're going to work with what we have, all right? There are a small group of us coming together that are knowing each other by name, that are praying for each other, that are seeing to each other's needs. So let's keep opening and closing videos with prayer. And I will tell you, I do not sit down to record a video without having done research, without having cleansed my body, and without having cleansed my mind to the best of my ability. I want nothing more than for the work I do to be truly used of God to reach someone. And I think as long as I'm continuing to do that, and as long as you know that that is my number one goal, I think you guys will continue to support me into the new year. I have a few cool ideas. Like I said already, maybe coming up we'll do kind of more year-round than seasonal, and do something more of a daily vlog style that's interesting, but it doesn't get so far outside of this important work. I don't want it to become about me as much as I want it to be about the work. And I always worry about not having enough research time. That scares me. And it's why I haven't done something. It's why I haven't caved to that pressure to have it look more like reality TV, you know. So anyway, another idea that I'd like to do next year, I want to interview ministers of all types and find out specifically about their callings. What was your calling to become a minister? Why do they believe they were called to be men of God? How does that influence their decision making? Maybe we'll get into doctrine of theology, but most of all, let's get to know the people who are providing spiritual care to us and how they got about doing that. I may have some interest in doing something more than that as well, but we'll see. God willing, really. I mean, this has become such a blessing in my life. I cannot tell you. I am truly grateful. I am truly merry this Christmas. If you'd like to support our work, you know the spiel. There is a PayPal. Its link is in the video description. I'll be getting a P.O. box if some would like to support me but are more comfortable with less technological means. For now, you can use P.O. Box 561, Chesapeake Beach, Maryland, 20732, but that's going to change. It's temporary, but I will let you know. My book's on Amazon.com/author/Nicholas Garrett, all kinds of stuff below. Website. Let's say a quick prayer. God, please accept our heartfelt thanks for this body of work we present to the world for 2021. Sometimes we just focused on teaching the simple basics of your truth. Sometimes we taught with the heavy weight and burden of some very deep subjects like sin and salvation. But you've led us to do it in a fun way, and we're grateful for that. You've let us turn it into something, and we're grateful for that too. God, always please be with us when making videos. Help us not to put foolish things out there into the ether, but to put things that always have the mark on them that make it clear that they're from you. Ultimately, that means keep me humble and keep me on track and keep the support coming in. God, be enough for us today. Guide our steps in the way that we should go. Guide our words that we might be useful, and bless us with gratitude. Merry Christmas. See you on the next one. Bye.